G'day scrappers, no money in the pocket, only got 1 penny left to spend. Well, first thing we go and do is take in some scrap steel, cash up. But the problem for scrappers here in Australia and just recently in the last few days here in Melbourne, we no longer get cash for scrap. So instead they put it in the bank, and so no longer, last minute decision to unload your garage of scrap metal that you've piled up or stuff to go and cash in to make a little bit of money, like 30-40 bucks, just to buy some food or something like that, or a couple of beers for the weekend. It goes into your bank account system now. So apparently it's all about car theft and trying to minimize the criminal activity in scrapping. Personally, I don't really think that's going to make much difference. Criminals these days are pretty well organized and they know how to get around things. All it's really going to affect is the small scrapper that just wants to make a few extra bucks for a little bit of hard work, picking up some rubbish off the street or out of a dumpster or something like that. And so instead of getting your pennies in your pocket, they've got to put it in the bank. And obviously low level scrappers that are scrapping for 30-40 bucks at a time are it's usually in a lot of cases it's old pensioners and people that might be unemployed. They're not trying to make a living out of scrap metal. They're just trying to just get a few extra little bucks, and it's really hard work and to scrap metal, or even there are you got your old guys that go around collecting aluminium cans, things like that. You fill up a bag of aluminium cans and there's only like $4 worth of aluminium, if that, and that's a pretty big bag. And I often see old scrappers on push bikes with a little milk crate on the back, and they've got a little bag of aluminium cans, a little bit of scrap aluminium, maybe a few pieces of copper, some brass tap or something like that, and they ride all the way to the scrapyard, because most scrapyards are pretty far away from residential areas, and they ride all the way there with a little milk crate full of a few dollars worth of scrap. I've seen guys with $7-8 worth of scrap in that they've cashed in, and now they can't even get a measly $8 in their hand. They have to provide their bank account details and to get that 8 measly bucks. So I really feel sorry for it's always the case where they bring in these new laws and they make a big thing about it, that there's a big criminal activities and all that, but it's always the case that the small time scrapper, the little guy always gets affected the most. And all right, sure, the money goes in the bank, it's not a real problem, it's going to be there in the next couple of days. But usually when scrappers decide to grab their scrap metal and take it, it's usually that they're desperate for cash, and they rummage through the garage, pick out anything that they've got in scrap metal to take it there to cash in, because they really desperately need a little bit of money, and so now they've got to wait. And if you bring in your scrap metal Thursday or Friday, you're going to have to wait till the next week to get your measly 40-50 bucks. So yeah, it's so whilst they say it's for scrap cars and all that, well, as another scrapper pointed out, people don't necessarily you know, steal cars to take it to the scrapyard. They steal cars and they sell the parts. They break, you know, scrap it all out and sell parts, and that's where they make their money. Sure, they got the body, but they'll probably just end up cutting them up into smaller pieces and sending it off as regular scrap steel from now on. Yeah, so I'm not really sure that's going to help the criminal activity. You know, sure, you know, I'm all for it. Get rid of that criminal side of it, but yeah, I'm not sure it's going to help. It's just going to affect the little guy again, as usual. So I'm going to fill up the van and take this scrap in to the scrapyard, and for the first time I've got to bring in my bank account details and put that on file, and yeah, and wait for the money. So I've got my van all empty, ready to go. I'm going to start packing in all this scrap steel, and like magic, hey presto, just like magic, all the scrap metal is gone. Mostly empty there, that's just my scrap metal. Empty there, just stuff to deal with a little bit later. So there we have it. Van loaded up with the 2 days of scrap metal that I picked up off the street. So now all I'm left to do is just top up the little empty space there with some of my stuff that I've got, some old computer and electrical stuff that I scrapped out, and then if I've still got room, I'll scrap out a couple of fans, might even scrap out a microwave and fill it up with little bits and pieces of scrap and stuff, and maybe even do a couple of PCs. Just fill up the last bit of room that I've got there. But there we go. So now let's go to the scrapyard and get some money in the bank. Okay, so I'm back from the scrapyard, and I had a whopping 894 kilos of pressing steel. That's pretty. That's a pretty decent load there. In case you're wondering, in pounds, that's 2,000 pounds. So that's a lot of steel, and we're back to 16 cents a kilo. So $143.04. That's that's a pretty good load, and not bad at all. The most of that, as you saw, was over the weekend, and there was some steel that I had from my own eWaste recycling. Yeah, but the majority was what I picked up over the weekend, and there was a lot of heavy steel, bars, and some good stuff like that. And those oil heaters probably made a big difference, because for the size, they're very heavy. One of them was super heavy. So there you go, 894 kilos, 16 cents a kilo, 143.04. And just check my pocket and see how much money I've got. I've still got 1 penny. That's all I've got, because yep, it's in the bank. It's going in the bank sometime. I can expect it, you know, maybe tomorrow, maybe in a couple of days, who knows. So there you go. That's how it's going to be from now on. No matter what we take in, it's all got to go for the bank. So right now I'm just going to load up some non-ferrous. I got mid-grade insulated wire, and probably take in some cast aluminium, maybe some brass, stuff like that. But and here in Australia, you know, it's really hard to do a video or anything on mid-grade or sorry, insulated wire in general, and different grades, because every scrapyard has got a different system. So I can tell you one thing, and then you go to a scrapyard and they grade it a completely different way. So the best way to really understand what scrapyards pay and how they grade wire is to actually go to your actual scrapyard and work out what they. Here we've got to cut off all the cords, all the plugs. So all these plug ends, we've got to cut them off. And if they've got the other plug on the other side, you've got to cut them off too. And any plugs at all, actually, now. So even this thing here, technically I should cut that off, but you know, if I miss one or two, they're not going to worry about that. But even the little plastic plugs, everything has to come off here at my scrapyard anyway. And so it all goes as mid-grade insulated wire, unless it's obviously data cable or ribbon wire, Christmas lights and all that. And then you can actually leave the plugs on, and that will be low grade. So for some people, like some businesses that get a lot of this stuff, but you know, just don't have staff to sit there and cut plugs off, if you leave the plugs on, you're just going to get low grade insulated, which is about half the price. So here currently, I think at my scrapyard, I'm getting $2.10 a kilo, and low grade, it's about $1 a kilo. So if I left these plugs on, I'd get $1 a kilo. So it's worth taking the plugs off. And then at the same time, I still take off these brass plugs, the prongs, and you know, so you know, I don't really understand it, because inside here you can see there's still wire running through this piece of plastic. It's only a bit of plastic, and but they've got clean brass here, which is worth, you know, another 50% on top of that. So it kind of balances out anyway. I don't understand why they, you know, bother with that. But oh well. So I take the brass prongs off, and then the rest I'll just throw it into scrap metal. I'll throw it into one of my empty microwaves or PCs, because there's still copper and stuff inside it, and there's usually these just break off, so you still got bits of brass in there. So they're just little plugs that I've got to clean up. But there you go, guys. No cash for scrap, but it goes in your bank. And the only, you know, main problem, it's not really an issue, but you know, probably an issue for the smaller scrappers that only take in $15 or $20 worth of scrap at a time, you know, and they just want cash on the spot. Well, you know, they've got to wait. That's the only difference. And probably more so because it goes into your bank. So for those people that are that may be unemployed and getting welfare and stuff like that, like here in Australia, it really doesn't matter what kind of money you make from a scrapyard. If you're on Centrelink payments, then you have to actually declare your money, right? So even when it wasn't going in the bank, you still had to declare it, but probably more so now, because they can at any time scan your bank accounts and see if you're getting any money. Then they match it up if you've actually declared that, and you know, you could end up getting a big bill at the end of the year, and they'll take it out of your future payments if you don't let them know. And here in Australia, you know, they kind of got a fair system where they allow you, I think it's $1,000 working credit, so you can earn up to $1,000. It builds up. I think it goes like $50 a fortnight, and then up to a maximum of $1,000, and just sits there. So if you make $50 or $100 a fortnight in scrap metal or any kind of scrapping, you declare it. It doesn't come. You don't lose anything. It just comes off your working credit, and then by the next fortnight, if you haven't made anything that fortnight, that working credit will go back to 1,000. You know, so but even if you had a big pile of scrap, say $1,000 worth of scrap, and you took it in, and then your next payment, you notified, you know, Social Security that, you know, yeah, you made $1,000 in scrap this week. It still won't affect your payment unless you don't have that working credit. So I recommend, you know, like if you are in that situation that you're unemployed and that, you know, do declare your any monies that you make from scrapping, so it just doesn't hit you in the end, and you know, you get in trouble, or you know, you have to pay, you know, money back or something. You know, as I said, they do allow people to make a little bit of money, and you know, up to $1,000 before it affects your payment. So, you know, you're just much safer off doing that. But for everyone else, yeah, it's same deal. You make money, you have to declare it to your tax. So it's no real difference. And I suppose now, because the money goes into the bank, it's just, you know, it's even more so that, you know, the tax office is, you know, that's what it's all about, no doubt. You know, it's not about this stolen vehicles or criminal activity. You know, it's just getting the little guys for making a little bit extra cash and probably not declaring it in tax. So, oh well, that's life. And you know, we've got the choice, we can scrap or not scrap. So I reckon keep scrapping. All right guys, take it easy, and I'll catch you next time.